Hello and welcome to Talk Motivation with your host Elvis Eckardt, former pro athlete turned business owner, motivating you to achieve personal growth, form new habits, and find happiness in your career and life. Without further ado, let's jump right into today's episode.
Hello everybody! Believe it or not, but I am still Elvis Eckardt and your host of Talk Motivation. I started the podcast when we first went into isolation here in the UK in April 2020 and really enjoy bringing episodes to you which give you, well, hopefully some food for thought. Make sure to visit our website www.elvis-eckardt.com/podcast where you can subscribe to the show on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts and other sources so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, I'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would be much appreciated too. So welcome to episode 18. Today I want to talk about walking the talk, or the focus on the walk, not the talk. Leading by example is precisely why leaders focus on always doing exactly what they say. Your actions should be aligned with what you are saying. Although it's tough to practice what you preach, you need to model the change in behavior you want to see. The core of focusing on the walk, not the talk, is to be the change you want to see in others. In other words, you need to assess your own behavior first before communicating these changes. Because changing habitual practices isn't as easy as simply making a choice. I hope that makes sense. It's very important for a leader to be consistent with their actions. The single most essential component to effective management is trust. Everything will go out the window when trust is lost. And in the eyes of most people, a lie is a lie is a lie. Too often leaders want to run and hide from their mistakes. Don't make excuses, but be clear that you recognize where you went wrong. Being sorry isn't admission of defeat by any means. It revisits the human aspect that people screw up for a lot of different reasons. You are not an exemption. It is a great start to admit your mistakes and apologize. However, be clear in asking for support in moving forward. If you choose to ignore it rather than acknowledge it, don't be flabbergasted if things don't get better. Show people what the organizational values mean through your behaviors. People learn by observing their leaders. You must focus on your walk more than your talk. Bringing values to life is a behavioral issue because you are a role model for your people, especially if you run a business. Your values can be seen in terms of your behavior, where you go, what you say, how you spend your time, and how you deal with problems and crises. Actions speak louder than words. Everyone has lapses. Make sure that you acknowledge whenever you find yourself off track and in breach of your values. When problems catch you off balance, your immediate reaction might be contrary to your personal or organizational value system. Remember, subordinates will follow your lead. As a leader, you need to help your people succeed. You must smoothen the way for them because there are always impediments and obstacles to achieving goals. You must identify these barriers, remove them, or show your members how to deal with those that can't be removed. People desire recognition. The main reason why people leave their jobs is that they don't feel appreciated. Recognizing a worthwhile behavior is the single best way to ensure organizational commitment. Although none of us would work for less money than we feel is fair, money alone isn't enough for encouraging long-term high performance. People can't be motivated when they feel that what they are asked to do is worthless or contrary to their fundamental values. Most of us want to feel that we are valued as people, not just mere stuff. We want to be respected for who we are and not simply for what we do. We also respond positively to be with others who share similar beliefs and with whom we can build relationships. That, my friends, is the very reason why we need to focus on the walk and not the talk. Unfortunately, however, too often what top management says and does is abstruse at best and incongruous at worst. As Albert Schweitzer once said, example is not the main thing in influencing people, it is the only thing. Leading through example happens whether you decide to do it or not. You're doing it by default. You are, in essence, already walking the talk. The question is really, what talk are you walking? Don't get me wrong, but walking the talk is about congruency. Whether it is your company, your employees, or your peers that have diverse perspectives. These perspectives come into play when your behaviors are judged according to your words. Determining if we are modeling the behavior we espouse is further challenged by the fact that we are not typically adequate judges of the messages our actions actually communicate. The only way to truly answer the question about your own tendency to follow your words with appropriate actions is to get input from others and spend time in actual self-reflection. Well, it is true that many leaders do not spend time in self-reflection because they are avoiding discovering things about themselves they may not like or may not like to hear. Many of us avoid this time because we simply don't know how to do it. There are so many aspects of a leader's life that could be put under a personal microscope, and many of these would only serve to increase personal insecurity. The purpose of self-reflection regarding walking the talk is not so much the idea of finding yourself, whatever that means. Instead, this is a targeted and focused approach to testing whether what you believe to be true about yourself is actually supported by your behavior.
You are listening to Talk Motivation, the podcast where you get your weekly dose of motivation. Now back to your host, Elvis Eckardt.
There are 5 key questions you can consider that will bring you much closer to realizing how effectively you are actually delivering on your own words. The first question is, am I clear? Many times we confuse our employees about our expectations because we ourselves are not clear on what we mean. For example, when you say, I expect us to focus on collaboration, what could that mean? It could mean that you expect team members to work more openly with each other, with other teams, with other companies, or in all 3 situations. Depending on background and culture of the follower, it could also mean that the objective is to work without a manager. Or it could be understood to have an underlying message that individual performance will no longer be rewarded. A team holding a variety of these interpretations could be trying to behave in very different ways. The second question is, do I mean what I say? Have you fallen into the habit of explaining to your followers what you believe your expectations should be rather than what they really are? As leaders in challenging times, we sometimes feel obligated to tell our employees that things will get better soon. The problem is, often we don't know that. Or perhaps we don't even believe it. It is much better to be honest and brief than to be dishonest for the sake of morale. Our employees are smart people. They know when we don't mean what we say. The third question is, do I hold myself to a higher standard? Strong leaders are not willing to behave as they expect others to behave, but they are willing to hold themselves to even higher standards than they expect of others. By establishing higher standards for yourself than for your followers, you will find that you provide an authentic inspiration that goes well beyond simply stating. The fourth question is, do I understand how I am perceived? As a popular saying goes, it is impossible to see your own picture when you're standing in the frame. For leaders to ensure consistency between words and actions, they must receive feedback on how they are seen by others. If you do not have a formal mechanism for getting this feedback, start soliciting now. Be specific with your questions. Instead of, how am I perceived? Ask, how did people feel about that statement? Or what do you think I could do to be even more consistent? Last but not least, ask yourself, do I truly care? The purpose of walking the talk is to reinforce positive behavior and to teach your followers how to be more successful. If you reflect on your own feelings about your followers, you will find that the only important thing is to care about the success of your employees. If you are honest about your feelings on this, and you find that you really do not care as much as you want them to think you do, it's time to step back and find your passion again. True and effective leadership is built on trust. If your actions and your words are not in sync, followers, employees, they will not trust you, they will not trust your results, they will not trust your morale, and they will not trust your feedback. If leadership effectiveness is important to you, if it matters to you, then taking the time to reflect on your own consistency will be time well spent. And on this note, I want to finish this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening to Talk Motivation. If you enjoyed this week's episode, please share the love and let your network know about it. Make sure to follow my YouTube page too. The channel name is Elvis Eckardt Recruitment. All of the episodes are on there too. Thank you so much for making this one of your favorite podcasts. Please do go subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes because it helps others to find the show, or better yet, just tell your family, friends and acquaintances about it. Everyone really who loves a bit of positivity. Feel free to also connect with me on LinkedIn and we can take the conversation there.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Talk Motivation with your host, Elvis Eckardt. To listen to this episode again and to find previous episodes, search Talk Motivation on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts. Sayonara, muchachos!